The rocking motion of bees on their middle legs and hind legs, also called washboarding behavior, with a scratching and scrubbing movement of the two forelegs and pinching movements of the mandibles, a behavior which is mostly done collectively, is an enigmatic phenomenon yet to be decrypted. The anteroposterior rocking movement on the middle and hind legs is carried out with the anterior part of the body, head and thorax, lowered, while the posterior part of the body, abdomen, is in horizontal position, sometimes lifted upwards. During the backward movement, the head is progressively bent downwards to the point of almost touching the ground with the forehead. Simultaneously, the mandibles open and close along the surface with no evidence of pinching or picking anything. During this act, there are further peculiarities to be seen. One is the flexion of the antennae downwards, touching the ground during the bending of the head. The other peculiarity is the speed of the scratching and scrubbing movement of the forelegs, which often is increasing at the end of the backward movement, as would be done collecting material and sliding it backwards. All this is a sequence of motions which doesn't seem to have any practical or useful implications. Some see a cleaning purpose in this behavior, other assumptions talk about spreading pheromones supposedly produced by mandibular glands, or see the action as a rebound activity to periods of leisure. There are no limits to further options and hypotheses on this matter. From what I learned by scrutinizing and setting on video and photography the activities of honeybees, and from what I acquired from books and articles about them, these precious and marvelous insects never indulge themselves in fruitless and unpractical activities. On the contrary, they have an incredible capacity to work to a maximum efficiency, yield and return with a minimum of energy. Nothing is inefficient or superfluous in their daily work. How is this presumably useless rocking and scratching activity then to be understood, considering the extreme efficiency and practicality of bee behavior? In several occasions, inspecting the entomological microcosm, I have noticed how the ground-nesting solitary bees and wasps dig their way to create a nest underground. The sequence of movements they perform is very similar, almost identical to the rocking and scrubbing movement of the honeybee, who is a close relative. The affinity of Hymenoptera, like bumblebees, ants, ground-nesting solitary bees and wasps, to the earth are multiple and various. Obviously, earth is an essential element for a variety, probably for the majority of Hymenoptera. It spontaneously occurs to me to think that the rocking and scrubbing movement of the honeybee could have some kind of connection with the digging activity of Hymenoptera in this element, the earth, so substantial for this order. I wouldn't be surprised if the ancestral honeybee would have made their nest in the earth as bumblebees, many wasps and solitary bees do, before changing the habit over millions of years to nesting in cavities and ravines as they currently do. Even our human ancestors lived on trees to change their habits over millions of years and shift to the ground. In fact, molecular genetics of Hymenoptera has shown that the closest ancestral relative of honeybee was an earth wasp, as Dr. Manuela San and co-workers of the University of Freiburg disclosed in 2018. A hypothesis to explain the inexplicable rocking and scratching movement of the honeybee could be an ancestral remnant of this apparently digging activity which was formerly needed to nidify in the ground, as is today a natural behavior for many other Hymenoptera. The same way there are persistence of vestigial anatomical structures who lost their function with evolution, like the semilunar fold of the eyes in humans, Darwin's auricular tubercle, or the remnants of legs in some snakes, there could be behavioral relicts as well, like the digging and pushing backwards motion or rocking motion of the honeybees, which, like the anatomical relicts, lost their original function. I don't know when this phenomenon was first discovered and reported. If it first appeared in recent times, when insecticides appeared in agriculture, a speculative theory could be that this rocking movement, the pattern of which is probably stored and dormant in the bee brain and genetically transmitted since the dawn of time, is being triggered and revived by neurotoxins like neonicotinoids, a sadly famous insecticide due to its harmful effect on honeybees. This insecticide, like many others, inhibits the release of acetylcholinesterase, causing a hyperstimulation of the neurons supplying the muscles. Amongst other neurologic symptoms, the effect on honeybees is an uncontrolled and frantic movement of the legs, as described by Dr. Laurino at the University of Turin in 2011. In this context, as support to this speculative theory, I think of restless legs syndrome and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which are human chronic neurologic syndromes with hyperactivity that presumably have their origin in the impairment of human brain biochemistry, i.e. neurotransmitters, which are responsible for the regulation of muscle activity. A similar mechanism caused by neurotoxins in insecticides could be at the base of this iterate movement of honeybees, the intensity and persistence of which is astonishing. Inspecting my hives regularly, I could record this persistent and consuming activity for several weeks, day and night. Even though there are many questions still to be answered about this rocking and scrubbing behavior, I hope that this hypothesis, amongst many others, will be a further incentive towards more efforts to unravel the origin, meaning and function of this so far unexplained activity of honeybees, whose intelligence, skills and highly evolved social behavior has fascinated mankind since its origin.